Hey, 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 good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to Kingdom Conversation Special Edition. Listen, I'm super excited. I'm super happy about tonight. I'm super um, ready for this conversation. I have an amazing, amazing woman that is online with us. So listen, share, let people know that we're here. Come on in, share, share, share. Y'all know what we do. We're going to play this intro track. Hey, 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 welcome, 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 everybody, to Kingdom Conversation. Tonight's topic is on mental health. We have an amazing young lady who's on with us. Listen, when you come in, please, ma'am, please, sir, just tell us hi. Just say, hey, let us know that you're watching. Let us know where you're watching from. We would love to be able to see you, to greet you, and to hear from you. I'm super excited. Listen, I've had, um, the Bible says that we have this gift in earthen vessels,
Mhm.
earthen treasures. And God blessed me to have a sister in the gift of Dr. Stacia K. Wilkins. Listen, she is married to this phenomenal guy, right? By the name of, you better celebrate him. You better clap it up for him. Um, of Andre, but you listen. What I do is I give a soft intro because I really want to go in and go more, but I want you now to come and introduce yourself. Tell everybody who you are and a little bit about you.
Oh, Pastor Jay, thank you so much for having me. You are a friend and a brother to myself and to my husband. Um, I'm thankful what God does quickly in relationships and deeply in relationships. So
Yes.
I am first and foremost a woman who loves God
Mm-hmm.
and serves Him. And I
Mm-hmm.
serve him in multiple capacities. I am a preacher, so I'm an elder in the Lord's Church. I am a professor at Drexel University in their Master's in Addiction program. I am also a business owner, so I own my own private practice and consulting firm called SKW Counseling and Consulting. And I have my own ministry brand as well called Heart for Christ Ministries, where it's a ministry based in healing and deliverance as well as spiritual warfare. So I'm a pretty busy woman, but
Wow.
I've been in mental health for, gosh, this coming year will be about 19 years. And I've served a variety of populations in a number of different settings. You name it, I've done it for the most part. But now my passion is more geared towards leadership wellness and making sure that as leaders, in whatever capacity we function as leaders, that we are well and that we are okay, because we're often taught how to manage our teams, how to care for our people and make sure everything is okay with our people. But what about the bosses? Who remembers us? Who remembers the leaders? So that is my heart and my passion now. So that's me in a nutshell.
Wow, wow, wow. So you definitely wear many hats.
Absolutely.
And so let me start this conversation. First and foremost, thank you to all that are have joined. Please, ma'am, please, sir, please share. Please share. I want to take a quick moment to thank our sponsors, T. Bryan Graphics, who does
Mhm.
all our graphic work. Thank you so much to our sponsor, T. Bryan Graphics. Thank you to Juche, Jania Bryan. Thank you so much, Juche, for the moisturizer, making sure we moisturize and looking good on
Ah,
camera and stuff. And also, thank you goes out to Justice Bryan, producer 13, who did that phenomenal track that you heard on the intro coming
awesome.
into this evening. Thank you so much. And then thank you to my covering, my spiritual father, Bishop Cranford M. Davis, whom I love and
Mhm.
honor and cherish, Fresh Anointed Tabernacle out of Henderson, North Carolina. We
Mhm.
honor you, sir. So I got all of that out of the way. And again, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Pastor Gwen. Good evening, um, Sister Janet. Um, Let me start this way because
Mhm.
you said some things about the hats that you wear. From
Yeah.
your perspective, your hmm, thank you, Holy Ghost, process. What does kingdom look like to you? I need to start right there for a specific reason.
So I think kingdom is a lot of things, but I think I'm a go with the obvious on this one. Kingdom has to do with laws,
Ooh.
has to do with rule,
Mm-hmm.
has to do with reign, and it has to do with the state.
Mm.
So when I think about kingdom, it is the place where the king establishes a set of laws or code of conduct. He has a certain amount of rule, which is authority, and there is a time period or dispensation, a reign for that rule. And then he rules over a territory, over a land, over an estate. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but you know, my process has been learning how to submit to the law of the king, um, what he speaks over my life, his words over my life,
Ooh.
whether I like them or not, but coming into agreement with his word over my life. And then allowing him the authority, so giving him the seat to rule over my emotions, over my thought process, over the way that I take. So seeking him for guidance, right? And then because he reigns eternal, I give him that space over me and over everything
Mm-hmm.
concerning me throughout the course of my life. And he puts me in a place, a land that gives me territory. So wherever my feet go, he gives that to me. So I think that's how kingdom has shown up in my process, that I had to submit to his word. I had to allow him to rule. I had to roll out the royal carpet under his feet, so to speak, the royal carpet of my heart under his feet, so to speak,
You better
and
talk.
give him time to to be who he is in my life for as long as he wants to be. And then the land, the territory, the land of my mind, the land of my heart, the land of my emotions, the land of my life, um, is his domain. So learning to submit in that process, um, that's how I can contextualize kingdom for myself.
You said a mouthful.
Yeah.
Um, you said, let him have rule over my mind.
Hmm.
Good evening again. Bless you, Pastor Dwayne. You got jokes. That's my brother. I
Hey
love him
D, I know he
so
said
much.
something crazy.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Elder Demarcus Clark, Pastor Talita, um, Aunt
Cousin
Sarah.
T, you Lady T.
God bless you all. Please share, man. Please, sir. Please, man. Please share. Invite somebody in. Um, this subject on tonight, and I know we have like Mental Health Awareness Month and all that kind of stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think that it's an issue that should be. Bless you, Pastor Angela Barrett. Bless you, sister. Um, I don't think that it is something that should be confined to like a month, just as making an
Yeah,
awareness.
absolutely.
But as I was sitting and I told my wife, I said, babe, I don't know. I said, first of all, August 24th, 2008, 12:24 a.m., my mother transitioned from labor to
Hmm.
reward.
Hmm.
Some things you'll never forget.
Yeah.
Um, and I said, 2008, 2022, they were going to 23. I said, babe, I don't know why, but for some reason, she's just real heavy on me. And
Hmm.
I miss her more um, now than ever before because the holidays for me being an only child
Wow, me
was,
too. Look at that.
yeah, yeah. So like an only child, the holidays for me were very special.
Hmm.
I went from Washington, D.C. to South Carolina.
Hmm.
And it got me kind of into a place and a space to where I was like, okay, God, like, why is this so heavy on me and weighing on me? And God began to speak and said, as you go into this holiday celebrated season,
Hmm.
there are a lot of people that are hurting, that are going through, that don't have the necessary resources and outreach to be able to talk to someone or have someone to confide in or just someone to breathe with.
Yeah.
My question to you, sis, is how do you begin, I guess, to walk through that process of getting the necessary help to where you don't find yourself in a place of feeling abandoned, lonely,
Hmm.
and depressed? Because what'll happen is you'll find yourself in a cave, and if you're not careful, you'll stay there.
Hmm.
And what happens is you have, and I know I hope I'm not rambling.
No, you're
Um,
fine.
you'll find yourself ministering, working from a broken place
Hmm.
when you need to be healed yourself.
Hmm.
And instead of you functioning whole, you're dysfunctionally functioning. So how do we get back to
Hmm.
that place of wholeness and just being able to function? I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna toss it over to you. And I
Now,
know it's a loaded question.
that is a loaded question. I was going to say that first. That is a very loaded question. My question first is how are you asking, how do we get back to a place of wholeness from grief or just overall?
Both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah. That's why I loaded it the way that I did so that you could kind of speak to both issues because for somebody it may be grief and for somebody else it may be something else overall.
Yeah.
And take your time.
I can answer that. I'm trying to figure out which way I want to go first. Let me deal with the grief piece first, and then I think I'll paint a bigger picture. With the grief piece, you know, one of the reasons why grief is so hard to work through is because we collectively, I say we, do not understand the process of grief,
Mm,
especially in church, and we do not allow ourselves to go through a process of grief because we don't understand what it is. We just kind of, it just smacks us in the face one day and we just try to keep holding on the best way that we can. But it's important to know that grief is not linear, it is cyclical. So when we talk about the stages of grief, many of us have heard about the stages of grief, anger, depression, denial, bargaining, those stages of grief, right? And they are relevant. People do go through those emotions during grief. However, what a lot of people don't know is that those stages of grief were originally developed for the person who was actually dying, not the person who was
Mm.
actually, in a state of grief. It was for the person who was nearing death. So, what happened over time is that those stages were adapted to people who were also experiencing grief because they started noticing a similar process that people who were losing a loved one or had lost a loved one, they were also going through those emotions as well. So I like to look at grief in terms of seasons. There is a fall season where you have the shock and the leaves are falling and everything is changing and the weather is starting to cool. And then you get into the winter of the grief where everything is cold, everything is dark. You're just feeling it all the time. You feel like nothing's changing, everything is overwhelming. You're scared to go outside because the weather is crazy. You don't know what to do. Then you enter into a spring of grief where new beginnings, start to happen. And that's the first time that we actually start to see life again, maybe in a different way, but see life again and learn to start over. And then you have the summer of grief where it's hot, it's vibrant, it's colorful, but every now and again you get a bug that tries to nibble on you, smacking it away. And those are emotions that come up from grief, right? So there's a cycle of grief. And
Wow.
we don't even go through that cycle, you know, stage one, stage two, stage three. We can, but oftentimes we find ourselves going from different stages, especially people who have lost someone over the course of years. As you said, you lost your mother some years ago, but certain things bring up a deeper level of grief. So I think for us to first understand grief is cyclical. The second thing for us to understand is the task of grief. So, when we think about grief, there is a tier model of grief, what is called the tier model of grief, TEAR. And in the tier model of grief, the first task is to accept the reality of the loss. Notice I didn't say approve the reality of the loss.
Wow.
Accept it. Accept it merely has to do with acknowledgement. So that's me saying, Pastor Jay, you got on a red and black sweater tonight. That's acceptance, right? That's I've acknowledged you have on a red and black sweater tonight. Now, if I approved of it, that's an appraisal. That would say, I like the fact that you have on a red and black sweater tonight. It looks nice. Different, very different. So we have to accept the reality of the loss. The second step is that we have to experience the pain of the loss. And that is where a lot of us get stuck because we don't want to experience the pain of it. I
Wow.
liken the pain of grief to an ocean. I love the beach. I absolutely love the beach. I love the water. And what I don't like though is when I'm sitting like kind of on the shore and the waves are starting to wash up and they get a little more violent and it just smacks you. It completely can smack you over. That's what I don't
Hmm.
like. However, I love the beach. But if you think about it, you can sit on the beach and the waves are a bit more violent, a bit more forceful. But the
Hmm.
more you go down into the water, again, down against the wave, the more the water starts to calm.
Mm.
I don't think that's what collectively we believe about grief is that when we go down into the emotion, we don't believe it won't overtake us. We don't believe it won't kill us. We don't believe we won't survive it,
Wow.
but we will. We just got to go down into it. So, that second task there in the tier model is to experience the reality of the loss. The A in the tier model is adjusting to the new environment without the person that you lost. Yeah, so now you got to create a new normal. And depending on the type of relationship this was, if this is a person you talk to every day, or someone you saw every day, or if you didn't lose a person, you lost a job, you went there every day, now you're losing income, you're wondering if things will ever get back to normal, if you're going to end up homeless, all these questions come up. So now you got to adjust to this environment. We are humans that can adapt to just about any condition, and we have to trust in our ability to adjust and to adapt to a new environment. And then that final task in the tier grief model is to um, basically reinvest. We say reinvest in the new reality, and that means
Mm.
integrate the new reality into your lived experience. I tell people all the time, grief doesn't end. We don't get over it. We learn to integrate it. We learn to be in a place where we can build around it,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
I see my sister on here, Elder Kia Graham. Yes, you got to create new traditions. You got to create new culture. You may have to leave some traditions. You may have to leave some culture as well. But you want to fully invest in your new reality because you're still here and you're still worth it. You're still worth living. So, in the Tarot model of grief, we're accepting the reality of the loss. We're experiencing the pain of the loss. We are adjusting to a new environment, and we're reinvesting into a new reality. So that's my answer to grief, and also understanding um, these terms that we throw around all the time. We say grief, loss, bereavement, mourning, and we say they're all the same thing, and they're really not. Bereavement is a state of being in grief, right?
Wow.
But loss is an actual disconnection, the experience, disconnection that we feel from someone or something. And the grief is the actual psychological or emotional response that we have to the loss, right? But then mourning is what we call grief gone public. That's the actual expression, outward expression of the grief that we feel from the connection that we lost. And the mourning happens through funerals, through crying, through visiting the grave sites, setting up new traditions. All of that is a part of mourning. So I think it's good for us to understand what these terms mean, also what the tasks of grief are. So that is a way to get back to wholeness, in terms of and redefining what wholeness looks like for you, right?
Mm. Speak to that.
That's a
Speak
part
to
of
that.
that reintegration, you know, that I can, I am still worthy to live. I can acknowledge when I'm not in a good space, and I can ask for help. I can pull back from actions and behaviors that don't benefit me. Um, I can connect to relationships, still, because I was formed in relationships. So sometimes we have to redefine what life and what healing and what wholeness can look like for me after all this, happens. So that's my answer to grief. Now your bigger question, um, in terms of how do we get to a place, um, of wholeness. So I go all the way back to the beginning here,
Mhm.
with Adam and Eve, because we were created in relationship with God, in relationship with each other, with relationship with ourselves, and with relationship to the land. We can say that the Bible is a book about so many things. The Bible is a book about relationships. It's a book about kingdom. It's a book about land. It's a book about love. It's a book about war. It's a book about revelation. We could say so many things that the Bible is about. But God created us in a kingdom that the narrative of the kingdom is blessing and fruitfulness. So whenever we are not operating
Dr.
in
Stacy,
blessing and
please talk.
fruitfulness, we are not able to operate in our original design. So the dimensions, when we think about how we were created, so I often say this to um, some of the people that I talk to, that the kingdom has dimensions, right? So we were created upward, in an upward dimension. We were created in a downward dimension. We were created in a sideward dimension, and we were created in an inward dimension. Let's Right? So the upward dimension that we were created in has to do with our relationship to our creator, to God, to Christ. Our downward dimension has to do with our relationship to the land. He told us to be fruitful and multiply. He told us to take care of the land, have rule, dominion, and authority. Our sideward relationship is the first relationship we see is marriage. That institution that God ordained with each other. And then the inward relationship is our relationship to ourselves, how we view ourselves. So we see all this play out in Genesis 2. But by the time we get to Genesis 3, that whole thing changes when, you know, they eat the fruit. And what happens is our dimension, then our upward dimension, has been severed. Our sideward dimension to each other has also been severed. Our dimension to the land has been severed, and our dimension within ourselves has been severed. As a result of all of that, now um, we have enmity with God. We have pain in labor in relationships. We have distrust of each other. We have fear. We have shame. We have all those psychological elements that have come into our relationships. From the land, now we toil by the sweat of our brow. Work is hard. Um, and inwardly, we suffer the fact that we don't know our identity. We're not good enough. We don't know our God given identity. So when God sends his son to die for us, it is a reconciliation of the original narrative. He comes to fulfill, or reverse, I should say, the curse of the narrative, and brings us back to a place of wholeness where we can now approach the Father and be back in relationship with him. We can now have relationship with each other and experience justice and care with one another. We can take care of our land that he has given us, and we can not inflict so much emotional and physical violence upon ourselves, because we see who we are in him. So we are constantly working towards a place of healing. We are fighting. Our warfare is about fighting to get back to this original narrative, to make sure that these dimensions get restored as much as they can be in our everyday life. That's what this warfare is all about. We're fighting to get back to who we have always been. And so a place of wholeness is me being in right relationship with God, me understanding how to navigate my relationships, me being able to manage my emotions, and me being in an environment in which I exercise my dominion because He has given it to me as territory.
Listen, you you are blessing folks. I don't know if you can see any of the comments that are coming
I see
in,
some of them.
but you are they're going off in the comment section. Listen, if anybody has questions, and I put it out there, if you had some questions, please, ma'am, please, sir, ask your question, put it in the comment section. We're gonna try to get to it and address some things while we have Dr. Wilkins on tonight. If you have a question, please, ma'am, please, sir, put your question in the comment section. Um, that wholeness piece for me is something I think that has been missing with people because people have not been in a place of wholeness.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to about the church or the kingdom. And for me, for you to be effective in kingdom, you have to be whole within yourself to be able. Ooh, yeah. Oh Lord, I gotta post this. Listen, your sister just said something powerful. Wholeness without God is incomplete.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And so many people have been incomplete because they're missing pieces of them, their life, their their spirituality that have caused maybe some missteps in their
Mm-hmm.
growth process.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I thank God for a platform and for a conversation such as this, to where we can kind of speak to some things to help people kind of find their way back. Um, I want to throw something out. I got a question earlier. Um, I think you answered one of them. Somebody asked me, "Well, say what is your specialty?" And you said that before, but we didn't have a lot of people on. So if you don't mind just repeating that again for your specialty.
Sure. So I do have a variety of experiences. I've been a psychotherapist for almost 19 years now. And right now, for the past several years, actually, probably for the past maybe 10 years, I've
Excuse me.
been researching and working with leadership wellness. So, really ensuring that our leaders are well and that our leaders are okay. Because what I shared before is that leaders are trained to support their teams, to manage their people, but they do not see that attention is not given to their own psychological well-being or overall well-being, and a lot of leaders don't even know that they need it, which blows my mind. So my work now is passionately towards leadership because I see so much suffering in leadership positions, and I've also been in a position, several positions, where I've been the sufferer, and it was a process. It was hard, to get through. So I am here for leadership.
And the next question that they asked was, how do you handle maintenance with your clients?
Maintenance, meaning follow up, or like what is meant by maintenance. I don't know what's meant by maintenance. Um, Let me see how I can best answer that question. I think in terms of maintenance, you are setting goals with your clients to see what they want to establish, to see what kind of outcome they want. So, one of the things that I do with them is develop what I call a care plan, but it's what many in the clinical industry call a treatment plan. So, we develop a plan throughout their course of treatment that states what they feel the actual issue or problem is, what they want the outcome to be, and then I do interventions with them to teach them skills or, certain interventions so that they can employ them in their work. So maintenance is, I would say, is done through goal setting. and
Okay.
ensuring that they are able to accomplish those goals.
Okay. Awesome. I'm stuck. I got to go back to the leadership piece. How Paul said I have to be all things to all people, right?
Mhm.
And I think sometimes as leaders, we take that and we run with it, but we're not all things to the most important person,
Wow. Yeah.
and that is me, myself, and I.
Hmm.
Because we give and we pour, sometimes there is that gap or lack where we're not getting back into. So I guess my question is how do we begin first and foremost to identify, you know what, I need help,
Hmm.
right? Without it being an ego thing, um, a pride thing, but understanding, you know what, in order for me to be the kingdom leader that God has called me to, I first need to kind of get help.
Yeah.
Um, how do we break that barrier? How do we break that stereotype?
Hmm. So I think, sometimes people say that there were no emotions in the garden, right?
Ooh,
Um,
you made me sit back and stretch out on that one.
I beg to differ with that, um, because as soon as they ate the fruit, they heard the voice of God in the cool of the day. He was walking through the garden, and the first thing that was felt was fear. But
Mhm,
actually, I'll back up. The first thing that was felt was shame.
mhm,
I'm bad. Something is wrong with me. Let me cover up. Why? Because now I'm afraid of what God will do or what will happen to me. And it's interesting because in chapter 2, they said that they were naked and unashamed.
mhm, mhm,
They bore all that they were to God.
mhm.
So, in bringing that to light, we have learned to cover ourselves. We have learned to cover ourselves emotionally. We have learned to cover ourselves and protect ourselves relationally. We have learned to cover our
Mm,
bodies. We have learned to cover ourselves. Covering for us is a norm
wow.
that once was not normal, but it has become a norm. And with leaders specifically, because um, image is so big with leaders,
Mm.
part of that image is perpetuated by the leader themselves. And the
Oh,
leader often doesn't realize that. So it's maybe hard for leaders to take in, but I'm all right. I'm good for it tonight. Because I'm only talking about processes that I have gone through. Um, we perpetuate how people think about us because we don't expose who we really are. We don't show that we are also human. We dehumanize ourselves all the time to show that we're stronger, to show that we're better, to show that we're more competitive, to show that we can do anything that we want to do without realizing we are limited. We are not infallible. We are
mm.
not without mistake. So we perpetuate these images, and then people have those images of leadership. So then, how can you be in an environment where you are truly honest about who you are and honest with yourself, first of all, about who we are? We don't even go before God and strip in prayer. And that's the safest place to strip, but we don't even strip in prayer. So
Man.
we go before him with all of these dignitaries and big language and pomp and circumstance. And he's like, waiting, are you through yet? When you gonna let me see you?
Wow.
But we don't want to strip there. So if we don't strip there, then we're not going to strip for ourselves and we're not going to strip for anybody else. So to answer your question in a very short way, how do I get help? Strip.
Oh.
Strip. Let's take it
Oh.
all off. Take it all off and see who you really are. You know, one of the things I love about David, you know, we elevate him, we celebrate him as a king, right? He was this powerful warrior. He was chosen by God. He was this ruddy, little, lad or whatever. He was just anointed. David was a killer. David was an adulterer. David
David had some
David,
stuff with him.
David has some stuff. You hear me? He is the classic mental health vignette for me. You know, and
Wow.
what's interesting to me is, I mean, he was so gangster that you sleep with we free on here. I don't have to be doctor-ish, but we see this dude who he's so gangster. He sleeps with his commander's wife when his commander is out the war where David should actually be. And not only that, but because he found out he got the chick pregnant, then he tries to delay Uriah in multiple ways. And then this is the most gangster part to me. He sends a letter by Uriah to make sure he gives it to someone to make sure he is on the front line of the battle to get killed, all because he didn't want him to find out what he did with his wife. That's the most gangster thing ever. Yet, in all of that, when you read Psalms, you see how before God he placed the ugliness of his heart. And that's what God wants to see. You know, he had no problem with crying out to God and saying, this was in my heart. This was going on with me. This is how I feel. He had a conversation, not just with God, but with his soul. And I remember one of the Psalms, I think it's in Psalms, he said, why are you cast down, my soul? Why are you disquieted? Why are you so disturbed within me? Hope in God. He had a whole conversation with himself. We don't even do that. We don't ask why we feel the way that we do. We don't ask, where did that thought come from? And we don't ask, okay, I'm really bothered by this situation. Why does it even matter to me? We just go with it. Well, this is what I'm feeling. This is where I'm at. I'm just going to roll with it. As if we have no dominion back to land, right? No dominion over the territory of our emotions. We have learned helplessness, and we continue to function and learn helplessness instead of the power to overcome that God has given us. Does that mean that we won't have bad days? It's not what I'm saying. Does that mean that we won't want to get out of bed some days? No, that's not what I'm saying. I am saying, though, honor your human experience, because that is fully who you are. Honor your divine experience, because you are also fully divine. But let your divinity, your God status, what he has given us in his image and after his likeness, let that rule. Again, kingdom. Bringing the kingdom down to your emotions. Let that rule, right? Let that be the final authority for how you go forward with the rest of your day.
I literally want to throw my iPad, my phone, like, okay. So I gotta scroll back. Because Pastor T, God bless you, Bishop Riddick. My first presiding vice, Bishop Spencer Riddick, is on.
Oh, God bless you, sir.
Um,
God bless you.
Again, if you have questions, please, ma'am, please, sir, post them in the comment section. I'm trying to scroll back. My wife said, "What are some tools for leaders?" So I'm guessing as far as just Pastor T, can you just be just a little bit more um, transparent with that? You said, "What are some tools for leaders?" Can you clear that up just a little bit?
Um, I think I can start to answer that while she kind of types in what she fully means. Um, I think number one is leaders have to have boundaries. I say that all the time. I say that all the time. And in fact, I'm sure people are tired of hearing me say that. But I say that because I know what it's like to function as a person that doesn't have boundaries. So I am the boundary queen. I call myself the boundary queen. I have learned how to say no and not feel guilty about saying no. And that's the key, right? Saying no and not feeling guilty about it. But here's what we don't understand about boundaries is that when we say yes to something, we're actually saying no to something else, even if we don't verbally say no. If you had said to yourself, you know what, I'm going to clean my home today. It's Saturday. I'm going to clean my home. I'm not doing anything else. Excuse me, you've been trying to clean your home for months. And then your friend is like, you know what? I need some help with moving. I need you all day. You just told yourself, I haven't cleaned for months. I'm gonna clean today. But then your friend says, well, I need help with moving all day. It's a couple things you got to figure out here. Does your friend already have help? Because if they do, then you may want to honor your commitment to yourself. Or you may decide, okay, I'll help, but I'll only come for like an hour or two because I have other things to do. We are so busy saying yes to ourselves and no, or excuse me, yes to other people and no to ourselves. So
Woo! Say that
boundaries,
again. Say that again. Say that
we are
again.
so busy saying yes to other people and no to ourselves. And this is interesting because this begins to play out in church as resentment. And
Oh!
what is resentment in church starts to look like loyalty and allegiance and commitment, but it's resentment. It has nothing to do with loyalty. There's no gladness in the work. It's resentment. All because people have given their lives so much to something and have not varied their lives. And I think that's important. So the first thing that leaders need to do is have balance with boundaries. So I always say 3 C's of boundaries: be clear, be concise, and be courteous. Three
Say it
C's.
again. Say it again. Say it
Be
again.
clear in your boundaries, be clear, be concise, be courteous. So that means when you exercise your boundaries, be clear about what you can or cannot do. You don't say, well, I don't know if I can do that. Let me figure it out. No, that's not clear. You state what you can and cannot do. Be concise. Stop over explaining why you can't do something. If you can't do it, you can't do it. And then be courteous. You never want to hurt somebody or harm somebody while you're exercising a boundary. Now, if you are courteous in exercising a boundary and that person then feels offended because you exercise a boundary, their emotional management issue is not your issue. It belongs to them. And that's where we go wrong because people get hurt because we exercise boundaries. Not if you're courteous. People can have a problem with your boundaries all day long, but if you are courteous in expressing that boundary, then they need to handle their emotional issues. That is not your responsibility. So, one, exercising boundaries.
I'm in here literally going off on the inside because I literally had this conversation with someone on today.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, yeah. and you see me, I'm putting comments up as they're coming in. I'm listen. Oh, Station, I can I do this? Because you my sisters. Station, yo, like,
Yeah. It's tough. And I'm not saying it's easy, right? You know, but it's necessary. It's necessary. I learned a long time ago, and I live by this philosophy now. I made a promise to myself because I was your overcommitter. That was my issue with boundaries. I would overcommit in a minute and still have those tendencies at times, but I have a wonderful husband who keeps me accountable. I'll
Yeah.
even
That's
get,
my bruh.
you know what, and I appreciate him for it. I may get mad at him. You know, he doesn't, when I take certain engagements or things, he doesn't tell me no for the most part, but sometimes he pulls the husband card because my tendency towards overcommitment, it can get a little crazy. I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, we went to Hawaii for for vacation. And before I left, I think about a week or two before I left for Hawaii, I got a phone call to do a seminar at a marriage conference. I think it was going to be on Zoom in, I believe it was Illinois. So I got that call to do that. And I'm like hyped, like, oh, this is gonna be amazing. I was loving the vision of the founder. Like it was just gonna be amazing. So I'm telling him about it because I told the lady, I said, well, let me get right back to you. I'm sure it'll be fine, right? So my husband is like, well, when is the seminar? I said, oh, it's the day that we come back from Hawaii. He said, absolutely not. I said, what do you mean? Absolutely not. Yeah, I had to register that no because it wasn't quite going in. So I'm like, did he just tell me no? Um, so I'm trying to register this no, and I'm trying to make sense out of why he's telling me no. He's like, Stacia, we come back from Hawaii 8 o'clock in the morning. We are on a 6 hour time difference. This conference that you're trying to do is 7 o'clock at night. That makes absolutely no sense. Do you know how tired you're going to be? I'm like, that's all. That's the whole point. I can come home, I can go to sleep, and I get up and I do this conference. He said, no, you're not doing that. I was hot, but I had to submit, right? So I was like, fine. And I called the lady back. I said, I'm sorry, I am coming back. I'm flying back in from Hawaii that day. I'm not going to be able to do this, but please keep me in mind for future engagements. And she said to me, she said, we will make sure that the next year that we do this, we call you. Wonderful. So I'm sitting tight. I'm upset, right? I get over it. But let me tell you something. When we came back from Hawaii, my tail was asleep. Knocked out until about what 4 or 5 o'clock that night. I woke up. I think we ate. I went back to sleep, and I said, that was wisdom, and but I had to listen to it. Yes, we do need that, Lady T, from our spouses. They are the voice of reason because I will go 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 go. But I'm learning now, or have learned in the past few years. Um, I had to ask myself, why do I keep going? I don't
Mm.
have at this stage of my life, I'm still young, early 40s, but I don't have anything else to prove to no one or to myself.
Wow.
I have accomplished pretty much all I wanted to do, and everything else is a bonus. So whatever God has allowed me to do, I'm grateful. And whatever He will continue to allow me to do, I'm grateful. That doesn't mean I don't have a vision, because I do, but the hustle for me is over. So with all of that said, I promised myself a long time ago, I will not overcommit myself, or I will not kill myself to show my commitment to anyone or anything.
Woo.
And I live by that. So if there are times where I have to shut it all down because a lot of things are going on, I'm really, really tired, or it becomes too much, I carry a lot of weight for a lot of the things that I do. I carry weight. Um, if I have to shut it down, then I do that. I communicate that, but I do it. So yeah, so we still on number one, tip number one for leaders, boundaries.
Okay, so we just got a question that came in.
Uh-huh.
Um, I'm gonna try to read this. Please discuss the person who has made themselves a superhero in the eyes of people and then get upset because people treat them like a superhero and don't recognize when they are weak or in pain. Listen, Elder Graham, you gotta come on here with that because that's
Yeah,
good.
she always come out swinging. You know, she just be coming out swinging. I think it goes back to what I was saying a few minutes ago about how we perpetuate the image. Um, we have to learn how to, first of all, Superman, Superwoman, Princess Adora, She-Ra, whatever you want to call them. Listen, they're all fictional characters,
Mm,
fictional, and they're
mm,
fictional for a reason because they're not real.
mm.
And yet we keep trying to make a reality of something that is fictional. So I think when a person tries to show that they are a superhero, to me, what are they trying to rescue and what are they trying to hide?
Ooh,
Because a
wait, wait,
lot
wait,
of
wait, 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 wait. I don't mean to cut you off. You just rubbed on something right there. Can you please repeat that again for those that were in the back that didn't hear you on that? God Almighty.
I think they're trying to, what are you trying to rescue and what are you trying to hide? Um, because if we just look at Superman, if we have any Superman fans out there, um, how do they paint that picture? Superman was good looking, had his hair all slicked back, had a nice outfit, he was all powerful, all muscular. Clark Kent always losing his glasses, running into stuff, bumbling. Who wants to see that? Who wants to see Clark Kent? And who wants to be Clark Kent when you can try to perpetuate this image of Superman or Superwoman? Oftentimes we can see things in people that we actually see in ourselves, and that's what we try to rescue in them because secretly we want to rescue that in ourselves a lot of
Oh,
times.
Jesus.
Yeah, yeah. But I think there's such a fear in being known. And again, I think that goes back to the garden. There's such a fear of being known. And I don't mean go out and bear all your business, in the streets to everybody. That's not what I'm saying. But understand that we are all on this same continuum. We are all human. We are all finite. We all have limitations. We all have issues. Now, how we express those issues are different. How we cope with
Mm-hmm.
those issues are different. How we conceptualize those issues are different, but they are issues nonetheless. And we don't want to show, that we actually have issues. And I'm a bit baffled by that sometimes because I'm like, the more you perpetuate an image, you have people celebrating something that you're not. And you will then always feel this sense of alienation because you can never be who you are. And you will always be in a realm of performance because you're
Mm.
constantly trying to keep up something in the eyes of the people that have nothing to do with the soul of who you are.
My God. My God. Somebody told me, can we address Andre's question? And I'm trying to go back and look for it. Andre, if you can repost your question again for me, please. Because I'm not seeing it here in my comments, or text it to me real quick, bro. Text it to me real quick because I want to make sure that we get it in. I want to make sure that we get it in. And we're freezing because I don't know why my son is calling me. And I got my phone
Oh,
on Do
okay.
Not Disturb. So that's why when you see that glitch, that's what that's coming in. My son
Got it.
is
Got
calling
it.
me. So I apologize, everybody, for that. Oh God. So, oh, Andre, please post your question, bro. Please post your question because I want to make sure I get it in. Um, you have done a lot. Okay, so he says, what does healing look like for leaders who experience shame? Ooh, what does healing look like for leaders who experience shame and lack identity? Good God from Zion. Yeah,
That's a good
that's my
question.
bruh.
That's a loaded question.
Yeah, it really is, but I'm glad he
Yeah.
asked that.
What does healing look like for leaders who struggle with shame, did he say, and lack identity? Is that the question?
Who deals with shame and lack of identity? Yes.
Okay. So, whenever we talk about shame, there are two basic antidotes of shame, things that help someone to get over shame. The first one is exposure, because the literal word shame actually means to cover or to hide. So if we expose shame for what it is, that is the first step to getting through it. The second step is to show ourselves compassion, um, to silence that inner critic that is constantly saying what we're not doing, what we should do more of, why we're not doing this well. Um, we have to expose that I have this shame, and I am going to be um, compassionate with myself, not judging myself, but be compassionate where I am. And then seeking this sense of identity. Um, I find that oftentimes we have a hard time with identity because we have not been identified by the identifier. We have been identified by institutions. We have been identified by relationships. We have been identified by sin. We have been identified by performance, by a number of things, right? But we have not sought that deep relationship with the identifier. And it's interesting too because we live in a culture where identity is what you do. Your work is who you are. And that is the westernized understanding of identity. But if I can say it this way, your your doingness should not determine your amness. So I
Huh?
am, yeah, your doingness, what we do, right, does not determine or define your amness, who I am. I'll say it this way. I think part of identity is we have been functional in things for so long that we have not sat down to understand the function of amness, of who I am. Who did God say that I am? We go by titles, and this is why, a lot of stuff, you see this a lot. Honestly, I'm not, trying to put the church on blast or anything. I love the church, I really do, but I just see this a
No,
lot in
but speak the
church.
truth.
Yeah, I mean, I see this a lot in churches, where people are vying for position in church to solidify who they are. If I'm not leading praise and worship this Sunday, I have a whole tantrum. It's one,
Mm.
you know, if I'm not preaching enough, oh, you don't use me that much. Am I not good enough for you? If I'm not the head of an auxiliary, That means that my gift and my service don't matter. We have developed such a doing in church. We have become married to church positions, right? But if we had all of those titles stripped, who who would we be? And that's why people fall into devastation so much, because they don't know who they are apart from what they do. I say this all the time. I even have my I have several in my practice who are executives or doctors or lawyers, and one of the things that comes up often is burnout and um, stress. So um, that's one of the things I try to help them do, is to teach them strategies, um, to address the burnout and to help reignite their vision and their purpose. But what I find, what is very uh, thematic throughout these people, is that most times what they're doing is not who they are. There's a conflict in values there. So, what I usually try to get them to do is to develop their own personal mission statement. Who are you? How do you define yourself? And for those who are Christian clients, how does God define you? What has he called you? What does he say that you are? And I'll give you an example of myself very quickly. Um, when I finished my first master's in counseling, I was stoked. I mean, I was ready. I was ready to be a therapist, ready to get out there, ready to do it. I'm like, this is who I am. And I think a couple years after that, after I finished, God spoke to me and said, you need to go back for your MDiv. I said, I will not. I'm not doing that. Like, I knew how hard that program was. And as far as I was concerned, I was done with school. And I remember walking through the school because I had no peace. I had no peace. I kept saying, no, no, no. I remember walking through the school and I heard him clear as day. You thought your primary call was counsel? That is not your primary call. And it devastated me because I said, then what did I do all this for? You know, that means it felt like my whole world fell apart, because I always felt like if I can't counsel, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to be able to do anything else. But God, we all have a primary call to evangelize souls. So that was my primary call. Now, how we work our primary call is our secondary call. That's what we call our vocation. So, what God was really trying to show me was counseling or being a therapist, that's part of who you are. But that is not all that you are. And he said to me, you are my agent of healing in the earth. So when I sat down and I studied healing, and I just thought about all the things that I have been through, because if I don't know God as anything else, I know him intimately as Jehovah Rapha. I know him as my healer. I can speak on his behalf as a healer and one who fights for me and one who comes through dimensions and principalities to intervene for me. He is the wonderful counselor. He is the ultimate therapist. That's what I knew him as. So I sat down and I said, I need to understand who I am. And what came out on that paper is I am a facilitator of healing. And what does that mean? That everywhere I go, wherever I speak, whatever I touch, healing is infused to the atmosphere. So if there comes a day that I will never be a therapist again, if there comes a time that I will never pick up another mic to preach, I can write, I can talk, I can pray, I can still be who I am without all of these things. My sister, Elder Graham, and I, we have this joke. Y'all can take this collar Here you go. You can take this collar because people don't understand the cost of this. They don't understand the cost of the collar. We wear it well. We dress it up real nice, but people don't understand the cost. So I am okay. I'm okay that I can be a leadership consultant or strategist because that's not my identity, but I'm still an agent of healing. I'm okay if in 2 to 3 years I decide to hang up my hat as a therapist because I am still an agent of healing. I'm okay if no one ever calls me doctor. I know I worked for it, but I'm still an agent of healing. Wherever I go, I will always be who I am, regardless of the vehicles that God has assigned to me for a specific amount of time to carry out. I will always be that thing. And the church said,
Listen, because the reality is like, yeah. Your sister said, because we have not sought God for purpose, people seek the title because church is the only place they have status. Truth.
yeah.
Sometimes people pursue platforms to gain esteem and respect. Mm. You said
Again,
something.
looking for identity. I want this platform because there's something I want you to call me. I'm not wondering what God is calling me, but there's something I want you to call me. Two
Mm,
different things. And
mm.
then when I don't get what you call me, I act out or I shame spiral or I go into depression or I become anxious or I leave the ministry because I didn't get from you what I wanted you to call me.
You said something, and I'm gonna throw this out here because I don't want to hold people too long, and I don't want to hold you too long
Mhm.
about burnout. How do we effectively cover our leaders when we see that they're burnt out, but they and you try to help them, but they won't even acknowledge that they're burnt out?
Mhm. I think that's a good question. One thing that is important for leaders who surround their leaders, asking your leader how you're doing. We don't even ask that question a lot of times. We just kind of let them go. But how are you today? Are you okay? Is there any way that I can support? Um, Sometimes you might have to fuss at your leaders in a very respectful way. You need to not do this or don't take on another engagement. You need to go sit down, go rest, go on vacation. It's really okay. The church will be fine. You know, I think we have to create, I think we have the responsibility, I think as secondary leaders, to create a culture of normalcy where leaders can rest. Rest is spiritual. Rest is not selfish. Rest is not weak. We need rest to be productive. You don't rest, you can't work. So I think we have to normalize that culture for them, that it's okay, and build their confidence in us that when they do release the reins, that they're cool with it because they know it's in good hands if they step away for a few hours or for a few days. Burnout is on a continuum. When we think about stress, right? So stress is something that is sudden. Burnout is something that's gradual. And one of the ways that we can look at so burnout is a result of chronic stress, really. So one way that we can look at burnout typically has three components, and we can measure this within ourselves. The first part of burnout is emotional exhaustion. So realizing, you know what, I'm carrying a lot of weight. I'm getting real snappy. I'm crying a lot. I'm feeling numb. I don't even feel anything. I'm disconnected. That's a sign that there's emotional exhaustion there. You have to find respite immediately to rest those emotions and to disconnect. If you don't, then you go from a stage of emotional exhaustion. And then what happens is you disengage. When you disengage, you're disconnecting yourselves from relationships, from people, and you can still be showing up and doing everything that you're supposed to do, and nobody will know that you're disconnected, but you are. You're disconnected. You're not feeling that passion anymore. You're not feeling that fire anymore. And then what happens then, because you are disconnected and you're not feeling that passion and you're not feeling that fire, then something called depersonalization happens. Now you come down hard on yourself because you haven't accomplished anything, because you're not doing what you need to do because you have disconnected. So I think seeing where you are on that continuum is the first step. Understanding what are your triggers, what are your emotional triggers, when are you tired, when have you had enough, when understanding that you have limits, even as a leader that carries a lot of responsibility. Again, back to that honesty piece, you have to be honest with yourself. The world will continue if you decide not to go for one day. And sometimes, yeah, I hear leaders all the time where I can't do this or I can't do that. Well, maybe in certain circumstances, you may not be able to not go a certain place or whatever. However, if you cannot, then still take the time to take care of yourself after you have gone. We just keep going, 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 and there's no respite. And has nothing to do with sleep. It has to do with unplugging. It has to do with times of solitude. It has to do with getting in touch with where you are. When we were talking about identity, I like to say identity changes and evolves like every 10 years. You're in an identity crisis. You're trying to figure out who the heck you are. You change positions on a job. You get elevated in the church. Um, you move to a different area. You're trying to figure out who am I now in relation to this. So we constantly have to ask those questions, and it's important for leaders to just be honest about that. And I don't think a lot of times we are because we're afraid of what we might see.
My, you know, we planted our ministry. We did not go into an established ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first really about 2 years, constant, always there. Bible study,
Mm-hmm.
church. And I'm at the place now, whereas, you know, because it's my wife and I and our associate minister, if she says, hey, Pastor, this Sunday I would like to do XYZ, and I look at it and I say, okay, well, let's do a rewind, or
Mm-hmm.
you know what, go enjoy, be with your family today. Take a day of rest.
Yeah.
And I think some people kind of may think that that's strange, or, well, that's the church. You need to have the church. Well, we are the church.
Yeah.
We are the church, the
Mm-hmm.
living, breathing church.
Yeah. We're an organism.
And right. And so, my thing is, if I don't take care of me, then I won't be able to be any good for anybody else.
Absolutely.
So understanding, what Pastor T said, what are my triggers? Understanding when those triggers
Mm-hmm.
come up, like when you said, I need to take a respite. I need to pause. I need to have a Selah moment.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I need me a straight up Selah moment where I
Mm-hmm.
just pause, unplug, disconnect,
Mm-hmm.
and my family would laugh at me because, listen, I finding Bigfoot, anything to deal with Bigfoot, I'd be watching it because it was just something that I could just lose myself in
Yeah.
without thinking about anything. And they
Yeah.
would laugh at me. They talking about, did they find him yet? They still looking for him. We season 2. They come close every year. And it wasn't even the fact that they found it. It's just my way of just
Yeah.
disconnecting.
Yeah. And I think that's powerful. And I think what we must understand, what's very important, is that self-care, it doesn't happen at isolated moments. This should
Mm-hmm.
be an everyday practice,
Mm-hmm.
where you
Mm-hmm.
insert
Mm-hmm.
pockets of self-care into your day. Um,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that, oh, my mother's on here, I see her. One of the things that I do, like I was sharing with you, backstage, every Monday for me is self-care day. I don't do any work. I don't take that many calls. Um, I'm not on the phone that long unless I have to be. That is my time, because going into my week is crazy. I see 16 clients in 2 days, a lot of weight. And that's not all that I do, right?
Wow.
So in between all of that, and even coming out of, my next 2 days, I finish work around 6 or 7 from the morning. And after that, my husband even knows I sit for a good 10 minutes. I don't want to talk to anybody because I've been talking all day. My face hurts. Don't ask me to figure out nothing. I don't know. I need that time to decompress and to release what's on me from that day. And that's an example of exerting pockets of self care in your day. A lot of us don't even have transitions from work to home to the kids to the husband to the bed. We don't have transitions. We just run it all together and then wake up the next morning and do it all over again. We got to break that up sometimes. How are you transitioning into your evening?
Mm.
And that's necessary. Those are things that we have to figure out. Sometimes I'm not on the phone at all in the evening. I put my phone on do not disturb, and people talk about me all the time. I don't care. But if y'all want a good doctor, give me my time and I'll come through for you. But we have to take care of ourselves, not just when the moment comes, but on a daily basis.
Okay, so with that being said, I thank you um, for this time and this conversation. I thank my brother for giving up this time with his queen.
Absolutely. I appreciate him, and I appreciate Overseer Knight for releasing me to be here with you tonight.
Listen, my big brother Overseer Knight. Listen, I love him to life. I love my Bethel family. Y'all are special. Y'all are
We
really
love you
really
too.
special. Y'all are really really special. So with that being said, any closing or parting words that you want to leave with the people on tonight?
Um, we are kingdom. We are kingdom.
Come on here.
And Jesus said that the kingdom of God is within us. And we have to live according to the standard of the kingdom, the law. We have to allow him to rule over our emotions, over our thoughts, over our will. We have to give him reign. He is royalty. Allow him the space and the time throughout our lifetime and for eternity, because he reigns from everlasting to everlasting. And he has given us an estate. This is our world. And especially as Christians, this is our world. Let's take it back. And let's take it back by taking ourselves back first.
Mm. If people want to reach you, how can they reach you?
So I am on Facebook. You can follow me on my Dr. Stay page. On Instagram, I am Dr. Stay. My website is Darar, Darar, enterprises.org. And I have also published a book a little over a year ago. It's called Get Up. You can find that on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and that's a book based on the life of the the young girl who got sick and died, Jairus' daughter, and Jesus came and raised her. So I walked through a devotional of, being beat down by life or being let down by certain things. And when sickness infects you, whether
Mm.
jealousy, whether it be anger or anything, how do you then go through that entire process of getting up? So it's a 30-day devotional. So definitely go check it out.
And again, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
your pour. We love you and we honor you and we honor the gift of you. So thank you for being a part of Kingdom Conversation. And as always, we say we are Kingdom. God bless you and good night.
Blessed.